Creation versus evolution impact on society. This comparison highlights the fundamental divide between a worldview based on random descent versus one based on intentional design. While Darwin focused on the how of biological diversity, creation focuses on the who and the why, the consequences of Darwinism on society. When Darwin's biological theories were applied to human sociology, often called social Darwinism, the consequences were profound and often devastating: devaluation of life. If humans are merely higher animals resulting from an accident, the concept of being wonderfully made disappears. This shift made it easier for societies to justify the elimination of the unfit, eugenics. In the early 20th century, many Western nations, including the US, used Darwinian logic to justify forced sterilizations of those deemed genetically inferior. Justification for racism. Darwin's subtitle for his book included the phrase, "The preservation of favored races in the struggle for life." Darwin's theories were used by others to claim that certain races were less evolved than others. Moral relativism. If there is no creator, there is no objective moral lawgiver. Ethics become a matter of what works for survival rather than what is right. Creation as a belief system. Creationism stands on the premise that complexity requires a designer. It is not just a religious idea, it is a framework for interpreting scientific data. Specific complexity. Creationists argue that biological systems, like the human eye or the knitting of a baby, are irreducibly complex, meaning they couldn't have evolved bit by bit because they only work when every part is present at once. The law of information. Creationism points out that information, DNA, never arises from random matter. It always comes from an intelligence. Inherent dignity. Because every human is an image bearer of God, every life has infinite value, regardless of physical, zero fitness, or health. From a biblical perspective, the biggest deception of Darwinism isn't just the biology, it's the erasure of the architect. If you can convince a person they are an accident, they will never look for their instruction manual, the Bible. Creationism teaches that you are here on purpose at this exact time in history, for a reason that was decided before you were even knit together. When a society shifts from the belief that humans are wonderfully made, the image of God, to the belief that humans are accidental animals, Darwinism, the moral landscape changes completely. There is no creator, there is no higher lawgiver to whom a government must answer. Here are the historical examples of how these two opposing belief systems have played out in reality. Darwinism and the erasure of the creator. When Darwin's survival of the fittest was applied to politics and sociology, it stripped away the idea of inherent human dignity. If life is just a biological competition, then the weak are seen as a burden to the strong. The Soviet Union, state atheism. The Soviet regime explicitly used Darwinism to replace the church. Karl Marx even asked to dedicate a volume of Das Kapital to Darwin because he felt Darwin provided the scientific basis for his view of history. Between the Great Purge and the gulags, an estimated 20 million people were killed. If there is no God, the state becomes the highest authority. Humans were viewed as cogs in a machine or biological units. Those who didn't fit the state's evolutionary goals were discarded. Nazi Germany, racial evolution. The Nazis took Darwinian selection and made it a matter of state policy. They believed they were helping evolution by weeding out the unfit. The Holocaust, 6 million Jews, and the T4 euthanasia program, 300,000 plus disabled individuals. They used the term Lebensunwertes Leben, life unworthy of life. This is the direct opposite of being wonderfully made. By erasing the creator, they erased the moral prohibition against murder, viewing it instead as biological pruning. Societies that raised God and protected people. On the other hand, societies that acknowledge a creator provide a safety net for the vulnerable because they believe rights come from God, not from the government. The foundation of the United States. While not a perfect society, the U.S. was founded on a specific rejection of the idea that the state gives you your value. The Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. If God gives you your rights, no man can take them away. This belief system eventually became the primary tool used by abolitionists like William Wilberforce and Frederick Douglass to end slavery. They argued that because every person has a soul and is wonderfully made, owning another human is a sin against the creator. The hospital and orphanage movement. Historically, the VA to the power of 5 Street majority of hospitals, orphanages, and relief organizations, like the Red Cross or Salvation Army, were founded by people driven by the biblical command to love your enemy and care for the least of these. In a Darwinian system, there is no evolutionary reason to build a hospital for the terminally ill or an orphanage for disabled children. They don't help the fitness of the species. But in a creation-based system, those people are seen as having infinite value, leading to a society that protects rather than discards. I ask you, are you standing for your creator or falling under the trap of ideas that leads us to governments that reject God and lift the ideas of evolution and Darwinism?